Draco the Ruler was truly no stranger to LA's criminal underworld. He was getting in trouble with the law from an incredibly early age, claiming to have been arrested for the first time at the young age of just 12, after apparently stealing $1 from a tip jar.
What I went to jail for?
You were 12.
Oh man, I took $1 out of tip jar.
$1?
And then I tried to put it back.
After getting his first taste of law breaking, a preteen Draco would end up being shipped off to a youth correctional facility known as a camp. But unfortunately, it didn't seem that this camp-style punishment would address the root cause of Draco's issues. And apparently from here, a young Draco would continue to rack up teenage criminal charges, mainly related to burglary and gun possession, landing him in various youth correctional facilities throughout his teens. But Draco wouldn't be catching these early cases alone, but it would seem that many of Draco's early forays into crime were actually backed up by his younger brother, Ralphie the Plug, who would tell Adam 22 in a No Jumper interview that he was really out here catching cases for robbery with Draco at age 11.
When you first get locked up?
Shit, when I was 11.
11?
Mm-hmm.
For what?
Matter of fact, me and Draco had our first case together. Bullshit, attempted robbery, bullshit, little shit.
So is this an armed attempted robbery? Or
Nah,
just,
hell no, not at 11. Or armed at 11. This ain't Chicago. He ain't out here just tripping like that.
Sadly, as Draco got older, he'd continue to be involved in crime and the risks associated with it. He'd end up getting shot while still a freshman at Washington High, just age 15, eventually being kicked out of school completely, eventually winding up making a living through home invasions, or flu-flamming as he would call it. You see, apparently Draco and his buddies were pretty regular flu-flammers, with their door-to-door robbery team apparently being known as the Too Greedy Family, or later the Stinc team. Now, according to accusations by prosecutors, members of the Too Greedy Family were known as flockers, an LA term used for burglary crews, often targeting Asian households. And apparently a result of the crew's heritage in robbing LA's Asian community, a lot of the Too Greedy Family and Stinc team's artwork and jewelry would bear an Asian theme. And this obsession with Asian culture carried over into the music too, with Draco often rapping about Mei Ling taking him shopping, which an LA Times article covering Draco said is Draco's way of describing breaking into an Asian woman's house, robbing it, and buying out Neiman Marcus. Now, for the record, Draco has maintained that he simply likes Asian iconography, suggesting that the Buddha and cat logos that his crew frequently use are simply symbols of good business and good luck. However, if Draco's 2015 tweets are anything to go by, it's hard to say he has much respect for the Asian community. But Draco and his crew's targeting of the Asian community with home invasions isn't simply due to prejudice. Apparently, home invaders targeting the Asian community is an age-old tradition amongst LA burglars due to the apparent fact that Asian communities have an inherent distrust of traditional banks, with lower rates of bank account ownership, meaning a large proportion are likely to keep cash in their homes, thus putting them at risk to LA home invaders like Draco and the Stinc team, who are desperate to make off with that cash and spend it on designer clothes at Neiman Marcus. But Draco isn't the only LA rapper to speak on flu-flamming or flocking. Compton rapper YG's 2014 track Meet the Flockers would catch some heat after people noticed some lyrics suggesting that his crew would target Asian homes for robberies for the very same reasons. Anywho, despite being plugged into LA's criminal underworld, Draco the Ruler doesn't claim affiliation to any particular LA gang set, even going as far as to suggest during an interview on No Jumper that most rappers claim gang affiliation purely for protection.
Or does Draco gangbang?
We don't do all that. Cause we be gangbanging for protection. Bombs.
To be honest, calling most of LA's gang population bums is a pretty brave thing to do. But that says a lot about how Draco moved. He was fearless, and he did not care who he offended. And despite not claiming a known gang set, Draco did hail from South Central Los Angeles around the 100s, which is a neighborhood Crip territory. And as a result, over the course of his career, Draco maintained friendships with a number of sets of LA's neighborhood Crips, like the Rolling 40s, who he would publicly shout out on his social media.
Man, shout out to all the 40s, man. Happy Hood Day to the Crips.
So as a result of his gang connections and his background in home invasions, it's no surprise that the local police would categorize the Stinc team itself as a gang in its own right. Even though in the later stages of his career, Draco would maintain that his team were focused on the rapping rather than the streets, with Draco's lawyer later explaining that the local police are quick to conflate anybody that grew up around gangs as being a gang member.
Some prosecution's theory, anybody that grows up in a community that has gangs in it and they know gang members, they're gang affiliated, right?
Despite Draco's insistence that the Stinc team was just a rap crew, prosecutors would think otherwise. Court documents would later claim that the Too Greedy Family, or Stinc team, was a gang around 20 20 to 30 members strong, noting the fact that various members of the Stinc team also belonged to various factions of LA's neighborhood Crips, like the Rolling Hundreds and Rolling 40s. And ultimately, whether he liked it or not, the cops would categorize the Stinc team as a gang, with Draco the ruler at the top of the food chain. Draco would be running things with his blood brother Ralphie the Plug. The top up-and-coming artist other than Draco on their label was Ketchy the Great, and they would roll alongside a number of other affiliates including Bambino, Say So the Mac, Solo, Good Finesse, Money Monk, Kells, with connections to the Rolling 100s Crips, Young Bull, with apparent connections to the Rolling 30s, Too Shitty, with connections to the Rolling 60s, a teenage hitter by the name of AB or Arlington Blue, with connections to the Rolling 40s, and another rapper named Remble who would join the crew much later on. According to the police, the Stinc team were a ruthless gang made up of Crips and home invaders. But in Draco's eyes, his crew of former Flu Flammers were really just the next generation of LA's grimiest street rappers. And under Draco's rule, for a period of time, they would take over the LA street rap scene, flooding the streets with a flurry of hit songs and mixtapes, building up a huge buzz that could only be stopped by the cops.